Okay, welcome everyone. This is Washington State Building Code Council IBC tag for Thursday, October 16th, 2025, and we will try to take roll, please.
Alrighty. Todd Byerther,
Here.
Roger Haringa. I'm not seeing in the attendees. Joe Mayo. Not seeing here today. Che Fortaleza.
Present.
Thank you. Tim Woodard.
Present.
Thank you. Steve Belzak.
Present.
Thank you. Lance Dahl. Not seen in the room. Hoyt Jeter. Not with us yet. Sean Karlstrom. Not seen in the room. Todd Sullivan. Not seen in the room. Bill Mybush. Not with us today. Brian Horstman. Not with us. Josh Mergens.
Here.
Thank you. Trent Tenney. Not online. Michael Shaw. Not seeing here today. Brett Conway. Not online. Michael Barth. I see Michael's name online, but he's
There, I'm here. My buttons weren't working on unmuting.
understand it. Welcome, Michael. Leah Summer.
Present.
Thank you. Paul Clark.
Here.
Andy Leonto. I'm not seeing them in the room either. So we're shy of a quorum. We have 6 seats represented here today. And I'll monitor attendance to see if that pops up for us. So that means that we can't approve the agenda, and we can't approve the minutes that we have posted here today. We can review them, see if anybody has comments on the minutes, and then hop into the dwelling unit size topic in earnest. I think some folks are definitely prepared to talk about it today. So I'll turn it back over to you, Todd.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll just wait on the minutes, I think. Let's finish off. Any other anyone from the public like to be recognized? Okay, Elizabeth, please.
Yeah, Elizabeth Torsky with Cascade Natural Gas.
Okay, welcome. Okay, so we'll jump right into it. Last time we kind of went through an hour or so to introduce the problem, try to wrap our heads around a little bit, and my takeaway was we agreed to have these weekly sprints, but shorter, max 1 hour, so we can accomplish whatever the group wants to accomplish a day. And let's just get right into the dwelling unit size and kind of remember where we left it. My memory was we were going to start looking at language was kind of the key thing. And I don't have an update. Dustin, did we receive any, or we want to start with the model code language that we already have for the section?
Well, I thought the model code language would be a great place to jump off to see where the benchmark is that we're looking to move. And then just earlier today, Tim provided a director's rule from Seattle that allows a little bit smaller efficiency dwelling units. So we have some example language there. But Tim, before we jump off on that one, I had one question about it. And I think that one's written for a previous code, not necessarily the 2021 code. Whereas I'm not familiar with Seattle code as well. They might have some different numbers in that section.
As we all know, Seattle writes their own code, so it may be different than this. So we'll have to verify all those code correlations there. But in general, they give the titles of the code sections as well. So we should be able to do that fairly easily.
Yes. I just, once I got your message, I didn't have a chance to run through it here before the meeting. And so that was just one thing that jumped out at me as I was looking at the numbers in that director's rule. I have here too tiny to view anything in it, but my mouse is frozen. Give me 2 moments here. Okay, back live. I have our topic summary. We haven't really fully fleshed this one out, but I think that as we discuss through The different sections here that affect dwelling unit size in the building code that we will be adding to this list. Up at the top was I had on here to review the state amendment. We have a proposal from David Neiman to review, and then we have some general topics that we've already kind of added to the list from previous conversations. And so I guess the reviewing of the existing state amendment to this section and kind of characterizing what's already changed from the model code would probably be the best jumping off point. And it might be easier to show you guys this on the ICC website. This is the 2021 code. Looking at this section here in the 2024 code, there's no changes. And I gotta notice that Brett is online with us now. That doesn't quite get us to the quorum, but welcome, Brett. Let me just update that. Alrighty, so all of 1208 talks about the interior space dimensions. When we get into smaller stuff, pretty much everything that's 1208.1 through 1208.4 applies to efficiency dwelling units. We're not necessarily talking about efficiencies here, but a minimum dwelling unit that needs to change change the minimum size from 190 a little bit lower. Looking at the I'll go to the 2024 codes to show the model language, since this is what we're looking to update into anyway. Getting in here, so we have it's the same exact language in the state amendment. It matches up with the 2024 model code language. So it looks like the bar, we're just trying to move from 190 to some point lower and be able to justify that target. And I guess I'll pause there to hear from folks. Or Paul?
Yeah, so I did notice in the residential code there's some different sizes, and I guess I wonder, why we're so what's the kind of plan? Is this going to be in the IBC, or is it more in a residential kind of setting?
This is targeted for the International Building Code amendments, and that's why we're here with the IBC IEBC tag. Jay.
Yes, can we go over what is being proposed? What are they trying to change here?
As far as the proposals we have on hand to look at, or what the legislation is trying to do.
What the legislation is trying to do.
Okay, one moment.
You mentioned lowering that number. So what is that number?
Well, they didn't give us a target,
Okay.
but I'm pulling up the bill, and then we can talk about that.
Kim, do you want to weigh in while Dennis or Dustin's pulling it up?
Sure. I was just going to comment on what Shay was bringing up. And, it started off, they did have a number in it. I think it was like 170. And then through counteractions with the legislature, they agreed to just allow this tag to establish something that was smaller. And then that way it gave us provisions to add conditions, if you will. So it was, I just know they wanted it smaller, and 170 was previously in the legislation before this final bill was approved.
Okay.
Steve,
Let me.
I
Well,
know, yeah, I know in practice that this this minimum sizes are already hard to work around, especially with accessibility. So I'd love to hear what the others think about lowering that number.
Steve here, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't the 24 IBC already lowered it to 120 square feet?
No, I believe that was, hold on, I got my screens mishmashed here. 1 second.
It's 190 square feet, I believe. It's
Yes.
120 plus 70.
190 square feet is what the model code is, and then she's correct, 120 plus 70.
Got it. Thanks.
And so looking for something smaller than the efficiency dwelling, which is the 190 in there. Do we want to look up at previous versions of this bill at all, or I can get a final bill report, which kind of gives a little bit more insight into what we have going on. The final bill report, I remember reading this last time, doesn't give us a lot of direction on this particular bill. This it really kind of talks about what the SBCC does and how the building code regulates it, not exactly what they're targeting for us.
Tim, do you remember why 170 was proposed?
I couldn't tell you, and I think that was the reason why they agreed to take it out. If I remember code correctly, the 190 is fairly new. I can't remember if it was last cycle or the cycle before, but we were kind of adamant that we just reduced that all the way down to 190 now. So yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Ardell.
It started out as 190 square feet, but greater than or equal to 70 square feet. And that's the original bill language for this bill.
So the recent change that was at 220 for quite some time for an efficiency dwelling unit. However, if you look at the dwelling unit provisions, it's 2 rooms, one at 120, and then any other habitable space is 70. So that's how we propose the change to 190, because you could, to align the efficiency dwelling with the minimum room areas under 1208.4. So if you assume a dwelling unit has 1 habitable room and a bedroom, that's the concept. It's the 120 and the 70, and then other spaces in the room, pardon me, in the unit for the bathroom. So the efficiency dwelling unit was brought down to 190 from 220. I don't remember the basis for the 170, but I think the ask is there are proponents statewide who are looking for something even smaller than that. I think you see it in one of the proposals already. That is saying can it go down to 70? Can it go down to 120? Can it go down to 150? Seattle has an allowance for less than the 190 that's currently under 1208.5, where we permit it to go down to 150 by director's rule, a local rule. So this, I just want to give you a little background on the 190. Thanks.
Ardell, when you say 150, I mean, I guess maybe some of us are trying to understand what do we bump into? Obviously, Che acknowledged that accessibility is a big one, but should that be in the building code or should that?
I think within our rule, we do acknowledge that accessibility needs to be accommodated. So it's, if I'm in a building without a elevator, and I have an exception for accessibility requirements on the upper stories. So accessibility would get you a requirement for accessible units, not accessible units, sorry, type A, type B, on the arrival level. But if I don't have an elevator, then I don't have to provide accessible units on those upper floors. So that's the sort of the band of where you're at. If I've got, if I don't have an accessibility requirement, is it okay to go smaller? And the legislation gives the guidance of the National Healthy Institute. Sorry, I butchered that. And is that better guidance? I think that's the the discussion that the legislation in my mind is asking this group to have an SBCC to land on. Is there a smaller size unit than 190 for an efficiency dwelling unit? And what would be that number?
Yeah. And isn't it any guidance on that other standard? Where an actual number is provided? I don't remember.
I'm gonna defer. I think Micah's been in. You want to comment on that standard? I haven't spent as much time inside of it. But there is some guidance in there.
And I guess we're kind of at that point where we're talking about what other lower bounds start to control. Micah?
Thanks, Ardell. You're spot on for all your information. The National Healthy Housing Standard does not set a dwelling unit size. It only sets a habitable space size of 70 square feet. If you look in 1208.4, that already aligns with habitable rooms of a dwelling unit shall not be less than 70 square feet. So, or it says other habitable rooms in the building code, but there is already some alignment there, but that is the only section of that healthy housing standard. I want to say it's in like section 4 or 3 or 4, something like that, that provides a minimum square footage for habitable space. But other than that, it doesn't clarify how many of those need to make up a dwelling unit or what an actual dwelling unit is, things like that. So thanks.
Yeah, and Jay, I'll jump in real quick. This is another one where even though it's probably a very simple exercise to pick a number, this is one where I feel we just simply need what are the performance requirements? What are the criteria? What are we trying to achieve? Like we need to put it in words first and then establish what that number is. Go ahead, Jay.
Yes, I think what would be a good basis that we can use is the Seattle's rule on CDUs and see if we can put that to code. It's I believe it's Director's Rule 9-2017. And that allows for 120 square feet plus 30.
Okay, it's a good suggestion. So, but can somebody put in words what we're trying to achieve? So when we say a number, what problem are we trying to solve?
In my opinion,
Can
Todd, this goes back to affordable housing and slamming as many units as we can possibly fit into a footprint. And the legislators trying to make us fit more dwelling units into the same footprint. So that's our goal. But they don't give us a target except for under 190. That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
I guess I'm wondering, is there now, if we put it into our terms, like when do we get concerned about certain life safety or certain just comfort, or what are we trying to achieve, right? Can somebody put that in words?
I wonder also if we're trying to deal with tiny homes to allow more of them. I think that's another perspective. It's not always just apartments. Just keep that in mind.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ardell.
I think this is the difficult part around, what is, the code does still address health and sanitation.
Yeah.
And so in the past, when we've talked as a jurisdiction around what is the smallest size, there's the kind of the historic SROs that we're trying to stay out of. And that's my understanding is that's some of the basis of those minimum standards in 12 coming into the code, in chapter 12, pardon me. And so we're trying to maintain livability within a unit, and it's a kind of a broad assignment to
It is.
this tag. But I think that's why the point is towards the research done by the National Health and Housing Institute. I keep butchering that, but that's why we're still trying to maintain the intent of the code for within chapter 12 of the of livability and still, and allow it to go smaller. Yes, and Tim's right on. Legislators are looking for a way to get more affordable housing with the concept of adding smaller units, contributing to more units out there for people to live in.
Okay, so I think that firmly establishes the goal, and I kind of like this problem because normally we're dealing with such large systems and so forth. Here, we're actually getting down into near human environments and saying, where is it appropriate for the code to weigh in on? We shall be able to have a place to sit, sleep, and stand, and bathe, like the verbs of it. Like, what are we trying to do in this space that we feel the code should enforce? So, Hoyt.
I mean, sorry I was late. Had something, had a meeting ahead of this, but yeah, the one thing, they're getting smaller and smaller, and we're actually getting a lot of here at the city of Tacoma where people are trying to put in, accessory dwelling units. And I'm talking, they're almost like sheds, almost getting super small. And it's, I don't know if you guys are talking about where that limit should actually be. I think 70 is a little too small personally. But we have to be able to get, bathrooms, kitchens, all those different things. So hopefully that's being clearly communicated to the legislators that are putting this in. But they are trying to get smaller and smaller. And I know other places around the world are getting pretty small habitable rooms. So
Yeah. I mean, for the old school architects on this call from UW, I mean, I feel like we need the Frank Ching little diagram of what we're trying to achieve here, right? Anyone know the reference? If not, forget it. Go ahead, Micah.
Thanks. I just want to kind of talk to the tiny home mentioned a moment ago. That was brought up in some legislation, I want to say 3 or 4 cycles ago. And that was addressed in the residential code. If you're aware, there's an appendix in the residential code, maybe a building code as well, that does talk about tiny homes, but it just provides a definition that says they're less than 400 square feet. But for the codes, a dwelling unit is a dwelling unit, whether it's 100 square feet, whether it's 400 square feet, whether it's 600 square feet. And the SBCC did take action on tiny homes where they took it's pretty much there was a sleeping loft language in the model code language. We took that in for I want to say it was a 2021 cycle, and incorporated that into the model code or the base code for the state. So really wasn't anything left in the tiny home appendix that would be addressed. And then we further modified that this cycle and just made it loft. So we didn't dictate sleeping. We did get some extra safety provisions, but I don't think this is about the tiny homes. I think that was addressed. This is just really getting the more units in a smaller footprint and still making them somewhat livable. So just a little more history on tiny homes and this legislation. Thanks.
Hey, Micah, and I haven't looked at does the new MBI ICC tiny home standard give us any other data points to go off of? I haven't looked at it yet. So if anybody has, I didn't mean to single you out, Micah.
I haven't looked, and I don't think they made a bunch of significant changes to that appendix in the last cycle either.
Well, it wasn't the appendix. This is
the standard.
Standard, like 1220. Is that what it's going to be?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Sorry.
Okay. I'll look it up. Ardell, thanks, Micah.
2 points. One, just relative to the bathroom. The bathroom is not part of that minimum area of that because it's not considered a habitable room. And then secondly, well, the counter argument is to let the market drive, right? So if you get smaller, if the code allows something smaller, will the market dictate what people want to live in? And I'm not a proponent of that. I'm just saying like that is the counter argument that is often heard. And so what is the smallest that should be regulated? Thanks.
And is anyone proposing, Ardell, that there's no lower bound and because we don't have concerns that wouldn't be addressed by the market?
It has been proposed to us, and so we've had some version of a CEDU rule for some time now, but we've held to the code has a minimum, and while we adjust it, we do think that there should still be a minimum. And going sort of full into letting the market dictate is counter to the current code intent.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, thank you. Jay?
Yes, I sent an email to Dustin and Todd. I emailed the Seattle CDU requirements, and if we can just, my proposal is that we look into that and see if that's something that we can apply. Dustin, are you able to pull that up on the screen?
Yes, I am.
Because it has all of the diagrams and exhibits there that, and also the verbiage that will help us review how small a unit can be. So if you keep scrolling down, this allows for 150. 120 plus 30 of entry space, I believe. And then if you scroll down, there's a diagram on the bottom right there. Is that something that we can review and see if that's something that can be applied?
Yeah, it gives an example. And Ardell, did you put your hand up to respond to that from a Seattle perspective?
Yeah, I did want to thank you, Shay, for bringing that up. For those on the call that are not familiar, I am the building official for SDCI, Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections, and Micah is our technical code development director. And so we were both part of this most recent version of updating the CDU director's rule for the city of Seattle, which does allow to go to a living space of 120 square feet, and that is a habitable space requirement. And that aligns with the minimum habitable space of a dwelling unit that's currently in the code. Where we've reduced the requirement is on what we call occupiable space. And that allows for an additional 30 square feet. And the layout that you see here is typical. Like what is an efficiency? This is typical for an efficiency dwelling unit. And you might have the kitchen slide into the living room. I mean, that's really the reason for the break on that occupiable space is that even the code now has a reduction on the minimum clearance in front of a kitchen area, right, for room dimensional requirements. And so that was the basis of this, how small we can get. And there's a lot of discussion around how small should we get? And to be honest, we this tag hasn't opened up a submittal opportunity for a further change, but at this point, we are actually looking at just 120 and not the 150. And so I want to offer that. But yeah, if you have questions about this director's rule, this is a typical layout for an efficiency dwelling unit that meets the 150.
Ardell, are you saying that it could be proposed to go to 120 and not require the occupiable space in front of those activities?
You could, yeah, I think, and that's, so we actually proposed an SRC code change, and I've raised this earlier, and it's we've got a dwelling unit size that's not to my knowledge being addressed in the residential code for the multiplex. We also have a dwelling unit size that's in the that's in the IBC, and right now they're not aligned. So if we proposed a change in the 24 code to bring back the 120. And so full disclosure, our goal was to get a 120 into the residential code, and if it made sense to do the 120 here as well, to get alignment between the multiplex dwelling unit size and the building code dwelling unit size.
Seems like a good goal, right? That we use this mandate to correlate.
Yeah.
consistent
But
solution.
we have this in place today and it works. It's a lot of jurisdictions don't see anything this small. I mean, like no other jurisdiction to my knowledge in the state allows things that are smaller than the 190 or the 120 and 70. And so happy to discuss this, but there's also provisions within our director's rule around minimum cooking. We actually allow a microwave in a CDU, but the CDUs had a corresponding land use advantage that's no longer really relevant. And so we are looking at revising the CDU rule currently based on the land use changes. And so just want to give you full transparency about where we're headed as a city. Thanks.
Helpful, thank you. Let's go to Brett, please.
Yes, and I did make the understanding of the reference to Frank Ching. So
Thank you. Thank you so much.
A little bit along the lines of Ardell is, what if we don't have a minimum standard and just point to that, minimum housing standard guidelines book that was up on the screen and referenced by legislators? Just let the market drive it. Is there a negative for us?
Good. Yeah, it's a good question. Okay. Anybody have a response?
I do actually on that.
right, go ahead.
I'm not in agreement to let the market. We've been getting stuff for here in Tacoma that they want to meet the Seattle provisions for these small units and stuff, and we have been accepting it, on a kind of a case by case basis. They're kind of seeing how it is. I really think the code is a minimum. I don't think a market should drive it. We should set the minimum that we need to use, and then let them go from there. Because we do see a lot of, people, if you let the market driven as a building official or making calls, you'll get arguments to say, well, that's what the market calls. We want to do this. And we say, well, no, you can't do this. So we should actually have it actually set up. Hopefully our state will do this and make sure we set it up exactly what the minimum we want. And then we could revise it in the future. But having it just open, I don't personally agree with that, to have different areas using different criteria. And also there's different areas around the state with different levels of expertise. Some of them don't even have a fire department. They use some of the state stuff. So I don't think the market should actually drive it. We should actually set it what we want, and then we can revise it later if we believe the market needs to revise it. So that's my opinion.
Just a quick follow-up. The minimum would be what was stated in that standard.
Yeah. Oh, well, what I'm saying, the minimum should be set by the State Building Code Council. Actually come up and say, this is the minimum. Now, I'm not saying one way or the other what it should actually be, but we shouldn't leave it to what people are calling market driven. We should actually set it. And then if the market ends up saying, well, we need to change it somehow, then we should actually change in the proper method. It shouldn't just be like people are saying what the market's driven, because you'll be for how long I've been doing this, since the 1997 Uniform Building Code, you'll be amazed at what sometimes people will try to do in areas that are difficult to do things. So that I just wanted to give you that. I like what it is right up here, the small efficiency dwelling unit that I believe this is for Seattle, that's what was told, but we have had this come to our jurisdiction to use this as an alternate, and we have approved it on case by case basis. So just FYI.
Okay, thank you, Hoyt. When I think of market, I think of kind of what this diagram is saying. This is a plan, but it's like, what are we trying to achieve? We need habitable space. I've got Glenn Murcutt in my head, talking about the ings of things, like a place for sleeping, a place for living, a place for bathing. Is that how we can approach this problem, to say, prove to us that you're accomplishing those things, and we think it's 20 square feet for this, and then whatever 30 square feet for that, and if you can show how it overlaps, great. But I'm kind of curious about just putting in words. Let's go back to Che first.
Yes, I just want to clarify that the minimum dwelling unit size per code right now is 190 square feet. So the CEDU does not meet that, and that is why there's a reason there's a director's rule that allows this. The CEDU meets the 120 minimum room size, but does not meet the unit size. So anyway, from there, if we propose this size, then it's smaller than what the code requires.
Okay.
Currently. Yeah.
Okay.
And I really don't think we should go any smaller than this.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Dustin.
I just want to let you know we have a quorum now with Hoyt joining us.
Okay. We'll bounce back then in a second then if that's all right. Let's get these comments and we'll jump back to the agenda. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you kind of, as it talks about the market making a call, if we have the minimum dimensions or kind of minimum sizes, there's a lot of minimums that kind of make up the space, and I think maybe by having the square footage size, I mean, that 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 kind of dictates a lot more than just what the minimum size would dictate just by the design, like design of around all the toilet accessories, the kitchen, and the actual space of the sleeping room, can make the size up. And I know I would imagine people have trouble, kind of they can think of very creative ways to do some really weird things, but I think that if we kind of stick to the minimums, then we can help get there. I think.
Okay, thank you. Josh.
Hi, so I'll preface this with I am not a designer or architect. I'm a structural engineer, so people feel free to shoot this down. But it seems to me, hearing some of the conversations, what might resolve some of this is if we had a total square footage limit, total dwelling unit limit, and perhaps percentages that need to be dictated to certain areas, so with associated minimums. That way we can kind of handle in a codified way, to Hoyt's point, but also to have people be able to provide some alternatives. If you had minimum percentage, minimum square foot, I don't know if that's overcomplicating it, but it just seems to me there might be some options there to where they could maybe get some smaller size areas if they add a little more total area. I thinking out loud.
Yeah, I'll have a response to that, but go ahead, Micah. And we appreciate the engineering approach or perspective.
Yeah, thinking of just a few comments from other folks makes me think we also, and Dustin, I think you started a list before about topics, and maybe those need to be expanded, because what we are talking about, or what this legislation is talking about, is only the habitable space. The bathroom that you're seeing in this design is outside that 120. And the question is, are we going to allow that to be included in, say, the 120, 130? The kitchen space is outside, measured outside that 120. Are we going to allow that to be included in that measurement? So I think there's some other areas of the code that we may need to address with this. And then when I think to Brett's comment talking about letting market drive this, and I'm not sure if that was a question or if you had questions and what our thoughts were on it, but I think some of my concern with that is when you just let the market drive it, it may overlook or cause unintended consequences elsewhere. And I'm not sure if Ardell mentioned this, but when we start getting these dwelling units in the building code super small, how are we going to differentiate those from sleeping units? Because those are two different items in the code that do correlate with one another in some way, shape, or form. And then are you going to allow a sleeping unit to be within a dwelling unit? In this instance, if the dwelling unit is 120 square feet and you have a 30 square foot kitchen. So I think there's a lot of stuff there that maybe we need to add to our topic list. And then I do want to remind everybody that this example shown on the screen is not a dwelling unit as defined, it is an efficiency dwelling unit. It means all those provisions or all those allowances are in that one room, one space. So again, if we're going to make it look like an efficiency dwelling unit, the only difference is it's in one room per definition. So we may need to expand the code sections we're looking at if we're going to get into all these other types of discussions. Again, you know, I think what Josh just talked about was an overall square footage size. That could depend on the bathroom design. I mean, this one shows a full tub and toilet and sink, but you could have a wet bathroom that would be much smaller than this. It just comes down to design. And are we going to explicitly dictate that through this process? I'll stop. Thanks. Lots of time.
I agree a lot with that statement. I'll respond after Tim. Go ahead.
I was just gonna maybe ask that we pull up the legislation as we're going back and forth, because it was my understanding that we were required to reduce the efficiency dwelling unit size. So I just want to make sure if it does or does not.
Sorry, this
specifically
is the original bill. It's not the correct one. 1 second.
By the way, as you're doing that, Dustin, we're only talking about this today. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's what I thought. And so that I think that puts a lot of Micah's concerns to rest. We're not modifying anything about dwelling unit sizes. We're only modifying efficiency dwelling units.
I read that differently, Tim. I'm
do.
saying that the SBCC would recommend amendments that would allow for a minimum dwelling unit that is less than the requirements for an efficiency dwelling unit. So my understanding is we would be explicitly modifying the dwelling unit size to be lower than an efficiency dwelling unit size. Am I reading, is anybody else reading it the same way? I may be reading it.
So it should
I
be lots
agree.
of equal to, but
That's how I read it too.
I'm now reading it the way you just said, Micah.
we got to go 1 square foot less than.
Yeah. I read it exactly like Micah read too. So.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Tim. Okay, so I'll summarize what I think I'm hearing. I'm not hearing many life safety considerations here. Fire concerns, maybe a little bit of accessibility, egress related, but is that a fair statement that this is really a design problem? This is becoming more of an architecture, and then go ahead, Ardell, and I'll complete my thought after you respond to that.
Oh, sorry. I do think, again, going back to livability, that includes light
Yeah.
and air. And, you know, are you going to require natural light? Do you need to set back from you know, are there yard requirements for, you know, it's not just the dimensional requirements. I think there's, you know, if you're thinking about all the things that you want to be able to do inside a unit,
Yeah.
how does it need to include storage? Does it need to, you know, are there requirements elsewhere in the building? Are there amenity spaces? I think what people have seen more regularly is sleeping rooms in congregate housing that are this small, that there is additional space available, right? And so when you start putting all of that into a smaller unit, what other features are important to maintain in terms of light and ventilation, additional spaces within the building? You know, I don't know if that's anything that this group wants to touch, but I would be cautious to just limit it to the dimensional sizes. Thanks.
I 100% agree. And I think that's where I was going. I think it's a design problem. I think it's a more architecture type problem dealing with comfort, livability, equity, things like that. And if that's the case, we need a design approach, and we would assign this to a bunch of students to come up with lots of iterations and study the patterning of those solutions, and then say, well, we could keep it open-ended for anyone to solve. Really, we're seeing, you know, if we were trained AI to do a Monte Carlo approach to this, we would say, this is the lower 20th percentile, and that's a good way to mark the minimum area, or other things like Josh, you were saying, like, how do you put more of a formula to it? But anyone disagree with that? Because I think that should be our homework, is to start to now come back and try to have a defensible argument. And if that's through showing design diagrams or plan layouts, that's okay, in my opinion, if we feel there's a need to put a lower bound on it, which I think I'm hearing that. Or was that too much designerly approach there?
I was just gonna mention that we should set parameters on if that's the approach we choose to use. As mentioned, Seattle accepts a microwave for a quote unquote permanent cooking facility. Do we all accept that?
That's a great example. I agree. What defines cooking? What defines bathing? Go ahead, Ardell. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say the microwave is under debate again. So again, as we look at changes to this director's role locally because of land use changes around a small efficiency dwelling unit, again, there were benefits to that when this was originally put out under some tax incentives and some other Housing Affordability Act. So that is a continued debate on what is sufficient for, and certainly technology has moved. And we are at a place where, you know, do you need a range to be sufficient for cooking? I would challenge, what's the difference between a wet bar with a microwave and or a wet bar with a induction cooktop and a portable convection oven?
Well, yeah, we don't want to be accused in 10 years of being so 2025 also.
Yes.
But I was gonna say, Thanksgiving is pretty tough to cook a good turkey, and that's kind of tough.
Here, Mike, I'll throw it to you, but I mean, I think this is a good discussion, because we're also going to have to address it on the very extreme of what it defines shelter versus shelter on the next one. So go ahead, Micah.
I just want to throw out there that I appreciate folks turning in or showing the CDU item. I see that it's not on the meeting minutes or meeting documents unless I'm missing it. But if Dustin wants to send that out, I want to again caution folks to read through that, because as Ardell may have mentioned, there are more things in there than just the size. It has some storage requirements. It has natural light requirements that you can't replace with artificial light. So it's those things that are incorporated into that you know, yeah, we're smaller on square footage, but you're going to have to do all these other things to compensate for that, more or less. So please read through that, or Dustin, if you can send it out to this work group or post it, that'd be awesome. That way folks can have it. But there are a lot of other things in there other than just the size.
Would it be okay with the folks from Seattle if that got posted in our dwelling unit size kind of page where so I use it referenced? Okay.
Yeah, and you know, like I think you just made the joke about we were so 2025. Well, that is so 2017. So thanks.
That's even greater risk. Okay, thank you. Okay, to kind of close this out today, we've had a good discussion, but let's do it properly. Let's quickly go back and with quorum, so that we can kind of make a recommendation, take an action. Let's go back and first approve the agenda. So can we hear a motion to approve the agenda, please?
This is
make a
Tim. I
motion
move
to-
to approve the agenda.
Go Tim and then wait a second. Thank you. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Let's quickly skim over the minutes for September 3rd and October 9th, please. And while we're doing that, can we hear a motion to approve these 2 minutes? But we'll take our time to review them.
September 3rd.
This is Tim. I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Tim and then Hoyt. Scroll through this one.
And this was for last meeting where we didn't have a quorum.
Okay. Okay, any proposed edits? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Okay, now, with the ability to take action, are there any recommendations for homework on this item? And Dustin, remind us, are we, next week, we're gonna try to meet again, right?
Yeah, so every Thursday, from 1 till 2, we're gonna be meeting with the IBC tag group, and we're gonna alternate discussion topics. So next week will be temporary emergency shelters. So we would have 2 weeks to get back with homework for dwelling unit size stuff.
Okay. So with that, let's give homework. What would we like to see for next time? Tim, you made a good recommendation of let's define, make sure we're all in agreement on what requirements should be, what's acceptable, and we could take action of those items one by one on there. I think that's what you're putting down there, Dustin, right?
Well, today I've added habitable space size with some comments on the original bill, and then also permanent cooking facility. And I guess that'd be a question mark for that one. What do we want to require for that? And I heard some other stuff in there as well, but I can add a bunch of other stuff as well.
Okay. I'll put down some in writing, some of the criteria I think I'd like the group to help define better.
Could we surmise that with the current definition of dwelling unit and say the group's homework is to further refine the limits that it would take to meet the definition of a dwelling unit, which is permanent provisions for cooking, living, eating, and sleeping?
Okay. That's a really good idea. Because it's clearly our task, right? Okay. Okay, is that enough?
Can you put that just over in the comments where he's talking about that, where you say, just to make sure that we're looking at that when we're looking at all these topics.
So doing the item, their dwelling unit, we have the dwelling unit type definition there up in 6. Do you want to put comments on that item? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, just,
okay.
Yeah, so.
Tim, I think what I heard you say is within the definition, that kind of gives us some guidance on what the talking points are and what the criteria might be.
Yeah, because I mean, we're talking currently about cooking, but then I'm going, what about permanent provisions for sleeping?
Yeah.
I'm kind of going, what's the bed size we're using? What's the everything,
I agree. Yeah. I think that's the of things I was mentioning is like, what activities have to be accomplished in that definition. So I like that. And go further, like, is there a requirement to be able to stand? I mean, assume so, but we should talk about it. Okay. Anything else? Micah?
Just a verification, there'll be every Thursday meetings. You said once a week, but I want to verify those are Thursdays from 1 to 2.
Correct, and unless there's some oddball, but right now we're anticipating them every Thursday through December.
And we'll go as fast as we can. Okay. Okay, I found it productive. Thank you. I hope everyone else did too. With that, I think we probably on the agenda have an other business. Is there any other business? Okay. Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, Dustin, this is Hoyt.
What's up?
Real quick, have you sent, I was looking at my calendar in here, and I don't have every Thursday listed for this meeting. Did you send out a thing for every Thursday, or are you going to do that?
I'll double check that. I think we did, but I will double check, and if we haven't, I'll get it sent out so everybody has a placeholder on their calendars.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. And then the other thing, the ICC hearing's coming up.
Yep.
Right. So that's going to be next Thursday. Good to be
I know
at
some folks will be unavailable for that, and so.
But for 1 hour, I could jump out of the ICC hearings and attend it. An hour. It's not a problem. I mean, we're able to leave when we want. So I mean, I should just letting you know. I mean, and again, I wanted to say another thing. I apologize for being late. Someone walked in and I had to finish answering all their questions. So, but,
I hear you.
Yeah. So, but yeah, just letting you know on the ICC hearings, because I'm flying out 21st.
Okay.
And then I get back 31st. So, and then we have the WABO meeting. Are you going to the WABO meeting?
Where's that one going to be at this time?
That's in Chelan. And that's on the 6th.
I didn't
You
have
know, it's-
plans to attend, but I can I can maybe pivot some stuff there, but I'll double check on that.
Okay. I just thought I'd bring that up because you're having it on Thursday. I just want to make sure I got all the, all my, and that I'm at least make the quorum, because I really feel bad about being a little bit late. I didn't know how to get out of that meeting with the applicant here at the city. So.
Gotcha.
Well,
I understand, we got other jobs going on, so I appreciate you making the time for us.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime you need help, Dustin, always feel free to ask me.
Awesome. Thank you, Whit.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.